The laughter started before Ethan Caldwell had even reached his seat. He stood at the entrance of the Grand Hotel ballroom wearing the only dark suit he owned, its sleeves slightly too long and its collar carefully pressed that morning by his own tired hands. Around him, former classmates arrived in designer clothes, stepping out of luxury cars and greeting one another with expensive watches, polished smiles, and stories about promotions, investments, and overseas vacations. Ethan had come alone, carrying nothing but an old leather wallet, a faded photograph of his little daughter, and the quiet hope that, for one evening, he could forget how difficult life had become. But the moment a former classmate recognized him, whispers spread through the room. The single dad. The struggling one. The guy who never made it. And then someone laughed loudly enough for everyone to hear. If you have ever been judged by your clothes, your bank account, your past, or the mistakes life forced you to make, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to FK Stories. Because sometimes the person everyone looks down on is carrying a story far greater than anyone in the room could imagine. Ethan had once been one of the brightest students in his graduating class. He had dreamed of becoming an architect, building beautiful places where families could create beautiful memories. But life had other plans. Shortly after college, he married his high school sweetheart, Emily. They had a small apartment, second-hand furniture, and dreams that felt bigger than their bank account. Then their daughter Lily was born, and Ethan discovered a kind of love that made every sacrifice seem worthwhile. Unfortunately, the marriage did not survive the pressure. Emily left when Lily was 3, and Ethan became a single father almost overnight. He took whatever work he could find. Construction jobs, delivery shifts, maintenance work, anything that allowed him to keep food on the table and Lily safe. There were nights when Ethan returned home exhausted, with aching hands and barely enough money for groceries. But Lily would run toward him with her little arms open, and somehow the exhaustion disappeared. He never complained in front of her. When she needed school supplies, he found a way. When she got sick, he stayed awake beside her bed. When she asked why they did not live in a bigger house like some of her classmates, Ethan simply smiled and told her that a home was not measured by its size but by the love inside it. Years passed. Lily grew older, and Ethan continued working quietly. He never became wealthy. He never drove an expensive car. But he built something far more valuable, a daughter who believed her father was the strongest man in the world. Then came the reunion invitation. Ethan almost threw it away. He remembered how ambitious everyone had been back then. Many of his classmates had become executives, doctors, lawyers, investors, and entrepreneurs. Ethan imagined walking into that room and being reminded of everything he had failed to become. But Lily encouraged him to go. She told him he deserved one night for himself. So Ethan borrowed a suit from a friend, polished an old pair of shoes, and walked into the ballroom. Within minutes, the old comparisons began. One former classmate asked Ethan what company he owned. Another asked whether he had invested in real estate. When Ethan quietly explained that he worked in property maintenance, the man's smile changed. Someone nearby joked that Ethan had gone from designing buildings to cleaning them. A few people laughed. Ethan lowered his eyes and smiled politely. He could have defended himself. He could have told them about the nights he worked until his hands were numb, about the hospital bills he had paid, about the meals he had skipped so Lily could eat. But he knew something they did not. A person did not become successful simply because other people recognized their success. Then the room suddenly became quiet. A billionaire had arrived. Everyone turned toward the entrance as Victor Sterling, one of the most powerful businessmen in the city, walked into the ballroom. His company owned hotels, technology firms, and several major commercial properties. People immediately began moving toward him, desperate for introductions. But Victor ignored them. His eyes had locked onto Ethan. He began walking across the crowded ballroom. People stepped aside, confused. Ethan looked behind himself, wondering who Victor could possibly be approaching. Then Victor stopped directly in front of him. For several seconds, neither man spoke. Victor's expression changed from surprise to something Ethan had not seen in years, genuine respect. He reached out and shook Ethan's hand. The entire ballroom watched in silence. Victor then revealed something that changed everything. Years earlier, before Ethan became a single father, he had helped Victor during the darkest period of his life. Victor had been trying to launch his first major company and was close to losing everything. Ethan had quietly designed a small community project for him without demanding payment. That design eventually became the foundation for Victor's first successful development. But Ethan had never told anyone. Victor had spent years trying to find the man who had helped him when nobody believed in him. And now he had finally found him. The laughter disappeared. Victor explained that he had recently learned Ethan was still working far below his abilities because he had sacrificed his career to raise his daughter. He had watched Ethan's life from a distance through people connected to the old project, and he had never forgotten the kindness Ethan had shown him. Then Victor made an announcement that left the entire room speechless. He offered Ethan a senior position at his company, leading a new affordable housing development division. It was not charity. Victor said he wanted Ethan because he had seen his talent, his integrity, and his ability to understand what families actually needed. Ethan stood frozen. He thought about Lily. He thought about every rejection, every humiliating paycheck, every night he had wondered whether his sacrifices would ever mean anything. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to cry. But the most emotional moment came later, when Ethan returned home and told Lily what had happened. She listened quietly before throwing her arms around him. She reminded him of something he had once told her, that success was not about how high you climbed, but about how many people you helped along the way. Ethan realized that night that he had never actually failed. He had simply taken a different road. Months later, Ethan's new project began changing lives. Affordable homes were built for struggling families, and every building carried a small plaque dedicated to the belief that everyone deserved a safe place to call home. Ethan became successful, but he never became arrogant. He still remembered the man who walked into that reunion wearing an old suit and carrying years of doubt. And whenever someone asked him about his greatest achievement, Ethan never mentioned his salary, his office, or the buildings he designed. He always mentioned Lily. Because while the world had been busy measuring his worth by his bank account, his daughter had been measuring it by his heart. So if this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who has ever felt underestimated, and subscribe to FK Stories for more stories about kindness, hope, love, and second chances. And before the story ends, comment, "Kindness always wins," if you believe that a person's true value can never be measured by money, clothes, status, or appearances. Because sometimes, the person standing quietly at the back of the room is not the least successful person there. Sometimes, he is the one who sacrificed everything so someone he loved could have a better life. And sometimes, all it takes is one person with a good heart to walk across the crowd and remind him that the world finally sees what he was worth all along.